So, at the start of 2021, you'd be hard-pressed to find people who are familiar with Invincible. However, Prime Video's adaptation of Invincible comics hit screens in March of that year, and it was an extraordinary success, attracting rave reviews and an immediately obsessed audience. The show follows Mark Grayson, a 17-year-old high schooler who begins his transformation into a superhero under the watchful eye of Omni-Man, his father and the most powerful being on Earth. While he wants to be a friendly neighborhood, all-seeing and all-helping hero, he struggles to balance his everyday responsibilities and his corrosive relationship with his dad, especially as the truth of his origins comes to light. So, after the success of the animated show, a rumor started spreading that an Invincible live-action movie was in development, and fortunately, it turned out to be true. But despite the show's success, this movie's development is facing a lot of problems, and it's still very far from being released. The first problem is that even though the prospect of a live-action Invincible movie is compelling, it won't even be able to get 25% of the entire story in it. The longest feature-length films rarely exceed 3 hours, and this isn't a long enough period to tell the story from the comics. Invincible Season 1 is made up of 8 one-hour episodes, and even then, the installment only really reaches the end of the main character's origin story. While it's unlikely that the movie will even attempt to tackle the entire comic run in one go, it will still need to leave out a lot of detail due to the restrictive nature of the movie format. This isn't to say that movie franchises can't tell longer, epic stories. Properties such as Star Wars and the MCU are proof that movies can be used as a vehicle for long-form storytelling, but Invincible is currently nowhere near big enough to justify such a huge body of work being commissioned. If more than one film had already been confirmed, the concern would be reduced. However, at present, only one Invincible movie is in development. Another problem is that, despite the show's misleading Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic, Invincible isn't suitable for children. There are plenty of brutal moments in Invincible Season 1 and 2, and even more in the comics, with no shortage of bloodshed and mangled bodies. However, the violence is a huge part of the show's identity, and part of the reason why it works so well is its juxtaposition against the squeaky clean animation. Removing the gore from the equation for the live-action movie would change the feel of the Invincible universe too much. On the other hand, a more realistic depiction of the blood and guts in live-action movies could be a step too far. With a new movie franchise, it's important to have the first entry seen by as many people as possible. Unfortunately, Invincible's adult nature would mean a direct adaptation being too inappropriate for anything other than an R rating. This would reduce the audience size before the movie is even released. As a result, the creative team will have the difficult decision of whether they should compromise the reworking by omitting the extreme violence and sexual themes. An R-rated Invincible movie would be more faithful to the source material, but making it more child-friendly would broaden the appeal, so it's a tough call. Another thing is that Invincible has plenty of characters that are human, or at least human-looking, and certain figures, such as Invincible and Omni-Man, will mainly require a superhero suit to reflect their comic book origins. But many of the other characters will need extensive redesigns in order to work in a live-action movie. The jump from the pages of a comic book to an animated TV show isn't too extreme, but live-action versions of those same characters would call for a drastic reimagining. Seeing select Invincible characters through a realistic lens is certainly a thrilling prospect, but a great deal of them will likely be heavily reliant on CGI and VFX. At a certain point, it seems pointless to make a live-action movie at all if many of the important characters like Battle Beast and Robot won't be able to have their original looks in the live-action movie. Another big problem is the cast of this live-action film. The Invincible TV show is only 3 years old, but those voicing the characters have already become closely associated with their respective roles. For instance, it's already difficult to imagine J.K. Simmons' iconic voice not leaving the throat of Omni-Man. Unfortunately, for various reasons, many of the voice cast wouldn't be suited to playing their live-action counterparts. One of the main issues is that much of the current cast is much older than their respective characters. For context, Steven Yeun, who voices the teenage Mark Grayson, is in his 40s. There is a very similar disparity between Gillian Jacobs and her role as Atom Eve. As such, new actors would need to be cast to embody the live-action Invincible characters more accurately. While this is technically a very achievable task, it's a shame to see the current actors swept aside. J.K. Simmons, who is the iconic voice of Omni-Man, also won't be appearing as Omni-Man in this movie. However, it is very much possible that he plays a different character in the movie that suits his age. In an interview, Simmons addressed who he thinks should play his Invincible character in live action. First, Simmons essentially shot down the idea of playing the live action role himself, noting that he didn't want a 70-year-old Omni-Man in the movie. Next, he revealed that Hugh Jackman was the one actor who popped into his head for the role. Although he's uncertain if Jackman would be interested, he explained that the actor's physical build, maturity, gravitas, and versatility make him a strong choice for playing Omni-Man. So Jackman is quite an interesting choice to add to the discussion, especially since he's Simmons' top choice. Jackman is a solid candidate given his experience in the superhero genre. He has portrayed the fierce X-Men team member, Wolverine, for 2 decades now. It's unclear if he'd be interested, given he was once ready to retire from the Wolverine role. While Jon Hamm has been a top choice for the role, Jackman could undoubtedly pull off Omni-Man's intimidating presence and brutal methods. However, as Simmons noted, age could be a problem when it comes to Omni-Man in the Invincible adaptation. While Omni-Man is technically thousands of years old, his Viltrumite heritage makes him look no older than 50 and gives him incredible strength and athleticism. While Jackman is younger than Simmons, it's unclear how long the live-action movie will take. And if the live-action movie gets sequels, it might get tough even for Jackman to continue playing Omni-Man, but still, he will suit this role better than J.K. Simmons in the live-action. Another important thing is who will be directing this movie. Robert Kirkman, the writer of the original Invincible comics, was also involved with the TV show, and he is involved with the movie as well. The fact that Kirkman is also involved in the live-action Invincible movie shows that the writer is rightfully very protective of his creation. While he isn't a director himself, Kirkman will likely have a say regarding the choice of director for the project. The issue here is that choosing a director for the movie isn't a simple decision. There will be many people ready and willing to take the job, but someone very specific needs to fill the role. The logical move would be to hire a director with experience of making a superhero movie. However, doing so could result in a finished product that's too similar to its competitors. Inversely, giving the job to a director with no history in the genre could equally damage the movie. There needs to be careful consideration of all the eligible directors to create the best film possible. In my personal opinion, the Invincible live action can turn to be something like The Boys show on Amazon, so it will be a logical move to hire people who have previously worked on The Boys. And since we all know how well made The Boys show is, it will be safe to assume the people working on it can handle Invincible with care. Lastly, we have a problem with its story getting repetitive. Basically, there are 2 ways to interact with Invincible. If the comic book fans have seen the show, then they'll know that while some minor changes were made, the overall story remained the same. So, starting a live-action arm of the franchise would mean that Kirkman is telling the same story for the 3rd time, and retreading this same narrative ground could prevent some existing fans from watching what is essentially another reboot that is coming out at the same time as the animated show, which is telling the same story. So right now, this movie is definitely facing a lot of problem, but the work is still continuing, and with the animated show getting more famous, it will be easier to market this movie because it will already have an established fan base. So yeah, that's all for this video, and thanks for watching.